And okay, thank you, Lee, Anthony, and thank you for all those who joined, right? Because I don't take this lightly, right? After a busy day of work, spending your evening with me. And so this is not an easy thing to do. You know, I have 3 children at home. With COVID, you know, there are other challenges we have, right? Our home has become school, playground, whatnot. So, you know, I definitely do not take that lightly, that your time, hopefully it will be of some use. A shameless plug as because, you know, Lee gave me the permission. I run a virtual group. This is not a virtual group that I started, actually. It's a very old group that used to run under SQL Pass, the DVA virtual group, but since past ceased operations, a few of us took the helm and just, you know, restarted it on a neutral platform. So if you look up, just search for DBA VUG, means DBA Virtual User Group. We meet second and fourth Wednesday of the month. We have about 2,200 plus members, but average, you know, you know, there's over 100 attendees pretty much in each meeting. So look it up if you're interested. But again, you know, only if it suits you. I also help our local user group, which also been virtual for almost a year and a half. Another very old user group called New England SQL Server User Group. It's been running close to 20 years. You know, because it's virtual, you know, if you ever want to look it up, it's called NESQL UG, New England SQL Server User Group. That's it. So that was my promotion. That thank you, Lee, for, you know, for giving me the opportunity. I normally don't talk about it in my talks. Okay, so let's get back to the topic. Now, some of you might be wondering, you know, what's there to talk about Management Studio, right? We use it for many years. You know, what's so special about it? So, just a little bit of history. SQL Server Management Studio used to be part of actually SQL Server installation till 2016. You could not get just a binary for SQL Server Management Studio, and Microsoft had this challenge, right? You know, they wanted to make SQL Server Management Studio and all this bells and whistle that comes with it is more rich, right, with features, but they're tied up with this release of SQL Server, right, with the service pack and cumulative updates and all that. So finally, they took it out, and since then, actually, just yesterday, a new version came out, which I'm using today. Just released yesterday, and it's 18.10. Came out yesterday. So they're really doing phenomenal job with this tool and other tools, you know, Azure Data Studio, Visual Studio Code. Overall, they're trying to make it easy for us, right? So a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you today, I'll tell this up front, that this is not the only way to get this information, right? You can get this from setting up traces. You can set this up with extended events filters. You can do it with DMVs, joining bunch of system tables, system views. But if it's already ready-made for you, if you can just see it with a click, why do all that, right? I'd rather work smarter and save my time instead of doing all this work to get the info that I can get right away. That's, you know, built in for me. So that's kind of the premise of this talk. So let's move on. I'm not going to talk about myself, but take a note of my contacts on the left. If you have any question, comments later on, if you want to follow up with me on some of the demos that I'm going to show you, please reach out. I guarantee you that you will get an answer from me within a day or two. That's for sure. And you can use any of this: Twitter, LinkedIn, direct email, from my blog post. You know, anything will work. I monitor all this. So this is a quote from Pedro Lopez. If you don't know Pedro Lopez, he used to work for Tiger Team, and I think now he moved into a, you know, to a different team, I think with Joe Sack. So this is a quote, you know, from him. And if you read this, you know, I highlighted this a little bit. They want to make the Showplan one-stop shop for query performance analysis, right? So they're making the query plan, which I'll talk about a little bit when we go to the demo. They want to put every information that you can get from the query plan. So we do not have to run extra traces. We do not have to set up traces with filters. Do not have to go back to all the, you know, all the DMVs and system views and all that. We can get it directly from there and make our life a little bit easier. And you can start troubleshooting earlier, right, from development phase. So they're trying to make it easy, right? You know, like if you're not a developer, if you're not a hardcore operational DBA, sometimes, you know, setting up these traces with extended events, with all the filters and all that, it's not simple, right? And one of the question that I answered in a Stack Exchange many years ago, um, got hundreds and thousands of views. Just the duration column with the extended events, why do they use millisecond and why do they use microsecond, right? That itself can be confusing. So don't expect a developer, to set up all this to troubleshoot their code. But if they just use this show plan and learn a couple of tricks and tips, they can start, looking at their performance, looking at where things are running longer, where things are going wrong from the very early phase. They don't have to wait for this to go to QA or come to the DBAs just before the release to do a pre and post, stress test and compare and all that. So when I present this, at the beginning, like many years ago, this is a very old presentation, but I always keep it up to date with the newer releases. I always get this question, hey, you showed us this feature, and I'll be using SQL Server 2019 for the demo, but I still have SQL Server 2012. Hopefully you don't have 2008. I personally got rid of 2008. I had to be aggressive. I still have 2012 at my work. So can I use this in 2012? Can I use this in 2012? And I'm not a very smart person, so I cannot remember all this. So what I did, I took hours and hours. I went through every feature, read the release notes, read the blog post, and I created this table. And so how far you can port this back? But if you look at on the right column, new SSMS required, I actually did not put what's the minimum version you need, because I have a very strong opinion on this, that you should be always using the latest and greatest Management Studio. And this is my personal opinion. If you do not agree with me, I'm absolutely okay with it. But if for some reason you say, for regulatory reason, for whatever, I don't know a good reason, nobody ever told me as of now, if you need an older version, you can keep multiple versions of Management Studio side by side. So that's also acceptable. But my personal opinion that you should always use the latest and greatest. So I'm not going to read this, but if you ask me that question during the presentation, that can I use this for an older version, I'll not answer you directly because I cannot remember this. I'll say go back and read that slide. So there are a couple of questions that I get. These are really not related to this, but as a side, I get this, there is a version of Management Studio, I think is a 18.7. You automatically get Azure Data Studio installed in your machine. A lot of people in our community did not like that because they thought that was not very nice for Microsoft to, push another tool without people knowing and without, my consent. So now you can actually do a command line installation of Management Studio, and you can choose not to install Azure Data Studio, just so you know. As soon as I mention Azure Data Studio, now people start asking, what is that? Should I get rid of Management Studio and should I just be using Azure Data Studio? I use both. I put a link here. It actually compares the features between Management Studio and Azure Data Studio. So take a look if you have that question. I think both tools has its own place, has its own strength and weakness. So I use both. Solution Explorer is deprecated. I should actually remove that. I'm following up. I did follow up. Microsoft is totally aware that people really want Solution Explorer back in Management Studio. So they are aware. I do not know when it's going to come out. SQL Server PowerShell module used to be an integrated download with a couple of other tools. So they totally decoupled it for good reason, because this was some of the problem that many years ago Microsoft had. All of these were bundled together. So for fixing smaller bugs, doing a quick new feature release, update it, like at a faster pace, right? They were always tied to these bigger releases. So they uncoupled it now. SQL Server PowerShell module is a separate download through PowerShell Gallery. It is not tied to any other tool. Just a note at the end, if you're in Azure, if you're using Azure Active Directory authentication with multi-factor authentication, your minimum version you need is 18.6 or later. So please take a look. If you still have 17 or anything below 18.6 and you are using Azure Active Directory authentication with MFA, you will be out of luck. I think the date is December this year. I don't remember exact date in December. but somewhere in December. So take a look at that. So I'm done with slides. That's it. I do not have any other slide. We'll go to demo. I'm using 2019 CU13, actually came out yesterday. I made a mistake here. I should have changed it, but I did download 18.10, which I'll show you. So I'm not using 18.19.2. Before I upload this slide, I'll make sure I fix this when I push this into my GitHub repo. These are a couple of links that I recommend you if you want to read a little bit more. Take a look. And again, my contact. So that's it. I do not have any other slide. So this will probably be a good segue for us to, before we go to demo, if you have any question, anyone want to ask any question, comments, probably a good time to do that.
Any questions from anyone?
Okay, if not, I'll continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll also keep my chat window open. So I'm going to go straight to Management Studio. All this talk is about Management Studio. As you can see, I said in my slide that that was a mistake. I did upgrade it yesterday to 18.10, and I'll fix my slide before I post it. So what I start doing, since 18.0 is a major version, and then, 18.10, I added this last night. When I saw the 18.10 release, I was not aware that this will come just before the day of my presentation. So anyways, I know most of you probably do not have time to, read the release notes and, go through this. So I kind of put a small summary of the major things that came out since 18.10. I'm not going to read this, but you will get this in my GitHub repo if anyone is interested. Take a look. I also have a setup that I ran before all of you came online. It takes about 3 minutes in my laptop, between 2 and 3 minutes. I'm using AdventureWorks, and like I put enough note where you can download this. This is one of the demo database that Microsoft provide. There's no proprietary information. You can download it. And then I also did some other setup, using Adam Mechanic's famous scripts that a lot of people use. I created some big tables for demo purpose. I made sure that I, put his blog and mention his name, so people know that I did not write this. I copy pasted, and I also did some query store setup, because I have a couple of features that I want to show you in case if you are using query store. So fair enough. Again, if any question on this setups, please ask me a question right now, or anytime you feel like we're a small group. So I should be able to answer your questions. So before I go further, I'm just going to show you a couple of very, and all of these scripts that have enough comments for you to run this by yourself. So we'll mostly be looking at execution plan, right? So now, if some of you are new to this, and if you do not know what's an execution plan, you will probably have a little bit of difficulty following this talk, but I'm sure you will still be benefited. And if you do not know what's the execution plan, I'll just talk briefly. There's two kinds of execution plan. You can see here, one is called actual execution plan, and one is called estimated execution plan. And there are shortcuts, Control L and Control M get you there. You can turn those on. The difference between those two, actual execution plan will have runtime stats, because it's called actual because you ran the query. So it has the runtime metrics. It will be included into the plan. When you say estimate execution plan, there's no runtime stats because you haven't run it yet. If you're really new to this, and if you want to get started with the execution plan, there's a book by Grant Fritchie, who works for Redgate. I'm not sure if he left Redgate recently. I don't remember. I probably saw something in Twitter. He worked for Redgate for a long, long time, MVP for a long time. One of his book was sponsored by Redgate. The PDF copy is free to download. So it's not a pirated copy or anything. That's one of the best resources that I have seen on execution plan. And there are a bunch of blog posts you will see. Microsoft has some good documentation on that, because I think for real troubleshooting, you really need to know how to read your execution plan, right? Because that's the only way to see what your query is really doing. You know, what are the operators you're using? What's the flow? Look at your, estimated number of rows and the actual number of rows, where there's difference, what kind of stats it's using, what index it's using. There's a bunch of things. Unless you look at those deeply, it will be hard to really troubleshoot any of the execution, any of the queries that you are trying to make faster, or looking at a long, whatever issue is this, right? So even if you're looking at a deadlock graph, blocking, you really need to know what's going on behind the scene. So all of this, I'm going to use AdventureWorks. I have this, Control+M I can do, or I can turn it on from here. So, and I kept very simple queries. So don't focus on these queries, what they're doing. I kept it very simple, 1 or 2 joins, but try to get the concept and the features so you can take this and use it at your workplace and, make your life a little bit easier. So if we do this, I just want to show you some common things that been released, recently, that were not there before in some of the previous execution plans. This was added recently. When this was first released, I was not very, very thrilled about this. I'm like, this is telling me what time this query finished, right? Doesn't tell me how long it ran for, when did I start? So I didn't appreciate that. And there's a lot of comment about this. And now you can actually turn this off if you go to your settings, and you can set this up so I don't want this. But at my workplace, I find this useful, because what I do is, always if I get a change request to run something, I'll copy this whole thing, right? So how many rows get affected, and I'll also get the completion time. So if for some reason, say like, this was a wrong update or a wrong delete or something went wrong, what time we ran this, right? People can go back and look at the timestamp. Now it doesn't tell you how long it ran, but at least give you some idea that what time that change was made. So, I have a better appreciation now than when it was released. Other thing, if you look at the execution plan, so without going anywhere, right, without doing anything else, right, you look at these costs, right? Yes, Jay, thank you so much. So Jay actually pasted a link to the Grant Fitch's book on the Redgate website that I was mentioning. I think I have a link in my site, in my reference page, but Jay already posted it. So if any of you want to download that, go to that URL that Jay posted and you can download that. So if you just look at this plan, right away, it gives me for each operator, how much time it took, right? And is this absolutely accurate? Probably no, but it gives you some idea that which operator is taking longer and where should I focus. The other thing is, you can see this 120%, 124%, and this is 100%. What is this telling us? 504 of 504. What this is telling us is my number of estimated rows and my number of actual rows are same. And this is an ideal case. And if this is not, and oftentimes you will not get ideal case. And, I have a whole talk about things like cardinal estimator. Actually, I'll be giving this at SQL Pass that's coming in November. Just talk about this, why estimated number of rows and actual number of rows we should know about it. If it, differs a lot, what are the problems, right? Because the memory grant and parallel execution plan or serial plan, a bunch of things depend on that. So as you can see here, right, things started getting a little bit different, because my estimated number of rows are 97,000, but my actual is 121. Still probably not a big deal. It's off by 24%. But if you see a huge, right, 1 compared to million, you have a bigger problem. So right there, we can see some of the stuff that we could not see in some of the older versions of Management Studio in the execution plan. Some other stuff that I'll show you. And like, again, I said, a lot of these things, if you go to your XML plan, you right click, show XML, and you can search for a lot of this. You can get it in a different way. I'll show you another example. Query time stats. Here is my CPU time, here is my elapsed time. You can get this by set statistics query time on, set statistics, IO on. But my point again, I do not have to do all this. It's already compiled and it's already ready for me to consume. So why do all this work, right? This is another good thing. sorry, that I have this right here. So what does this tell me? If my CPU time was 2260, but my elapsed time was 5100, where did the other time go? So those must be, there's some kind of weight, right? Either, any type of weight. That's why I lost that time, because the CPU only was that time, but my total time was 5 seconds. So where did those time go? And this is one of the, coolest thing that I find, that now you can get your weight stats per query. This was one of the biggest struggle we had long time to get weight stats just for a single query. Because if you look at a bunch of DMVs, you can get your weight stats for the whole server, or you can get it for, at a database level. But, since the server restarted, and, they're always, accumulating, right? Since till your last restart. So you have to take a snapshot, and then you have to take another snapshot, and then, do some math to get, for the time frame. But then you still won't be able to get it for an individual query. The only way to do this, we'll set up a time with the developer, say, okay, you run this, and this, I'm going to start this trace, filter by your host name or your, the login name and all that. Now I do not have to do any of this. If I capture this, it's all, ready-made for me. And I'll come back to this in a different demo and talk a little bit more about this. Trace flags. How do you know that there was a trace flag used into this particular query, right? And then it also gives you a scope. Is it a session level trace flag? Is it a server level trace flag? And was this trace flag, did this trace flag impact this particular query? If you see that is compile time equals true, means yes, it did. If it's false, means you have the trace flag, but that trace flag didn't have any impact on this query execution during the compile time. So all this is being exposed into this, which we didn't have before. Other good thing is, if we now go to, so like just come here. If I go to properties, now per node, I can now see my actual IO stats for each operator, right? What kind of IO are those, right? Are they like physical read, just logical read, read ahead, actually scans? Everything is here. And then time just for this individual operator, right? How cool is that, right? I can go and I know it's already exposed here, but if I want to see the actual and the elapsed, it's all here for me. And if you see like some of these, like this one, right? Many of these were in parallel. This will probably be all 0. You can get it per thread. So why this is important, right? If you have your max TOP and your, a cost threshold of parallelism set, right? And say if you have a, if you let one of these operators use multiple CPUs, multiple threads, you can come and see the numbers per thread, because if these are not evenly distributed, then you have a different problem. And if you run into that problem, you can come here and see why things are not, if things are not, distributed equally. You can look at some of those. There's another thing you can do. Oftentimes, we save this execution plan and then we send it to someone else, right? To take a look or share with people. And as you can see, this query is not completed here. So what they can do once they open it in their management studio, they can come into this tooltip and they can see the whole query, including the comments. This is something new. This was not there before. Yeah, these are some of the stuff I want to show you. And there's another thing I want to show you about Query Store. So if you're not using Query Store, this is not a talk about Query Store, but Erin Stalto, I think Lee was mentioning about her recording you have on your website. She's a master of Query Store. So I use Query Store in most of my production servers. It's turned on, with some, bells and whistles, what we want to collect. So, look at that. So there has been some improvement with the new version of SSMS and Query Store. So I'm going to just show you, a couple of those things. This is a new report that's built into the newer version of Query Store. So query weight statistics. So if you open this, this is accumulating since last restart or whatever is your thresholds. I can see what's my top weight for this database, and I can click on this. And again, don't focus on this particular weight. I'm just trying to give you the concept. So these are the top 3 queries that cause this weight. And now if I click this, I can come here and I can see the plan ID, and I can even see the execution plan for that particular query. I can come on the second one, I can see this. I can come on the third one and I can see this. So this is all been aggregated behind the scene for me. I do not have to collect all this. I do not have to run T-SQL. I do not have to run aggregation queries and all this. This has all been done for me. The other improvement that was done, and again, I do not remember what versions this came. Like I said, you should be, I have a strong opinion that you should be just using the latest version of Management Studio. So this is one of the, feature that I'm excited about. Max plans per query, because, if you have a busy server OLTP, I would not, in my production servers, I do not keep 200 copies of older plans, right? Because I'm not going to go back to troubleshoot to 200 plans if I have an issue. So you can, dial this down. Other cool thing is this. You can now adjust the policies, for what you want to capture in your query store, because query store does take space and it's part database. So, you decide what you want to, capture. You can control your CPU times, stale threshold, execution count, bunch of things. And these are some of the new features that came out. So I just wanted to mention that. I actually have a plan from a 2014. Maybe I should open that just to make my point that some of this stuff was not available. So this is the same query that I was showing you. If you run into an older version that I copied, you see here, I do not have the runtime, and I do not have the wait types. I do not have the trace flags. So a bunch of things I do not have, right? I do not have the runtime for each operator being exposed here, right? So this was from a 2014 version of, I think, of Management Studio. So any question, anyone? I do not see any, so I'm going to move on. Put in the chat, I'm watching it. If you can unmute, whatever the organizers decide, do that. So CX packet is another word type. This is related to parallelism. If you let your SQL Server use more than one CPU for an individual operator based on the cost, it also based on what's the setting of your cost threshold of parallelism, an individual operator can use more than one CPU. And that time you get this word called, CX packet. And there's a lot of caution about this word type because people have a lot of misinformation and misinterpret. One of the reasons it's misinterpreted is for any parallel operation, right? So to take an example, if I bring a couple of things to sort out, and if I come and distribute to all of you, if I give it like select 50 papers to all of you, say, sort this out and then give it back to me. Once I give this to you to sort out and I distributed this, I have nothing else to do, right? I have to wait for all of you to finish. So I'm still waiting, yes, for everybody to give me the result set back, but you really cannot do anything about that wait, right? So that wait, and for each of you to finish, so like if I give it to 10 of you, 9 of you finish early, and then one of the person is still doing the sort. Now everybody has to wait for that. These 9 people cannot get released till everybody's get done and give the result back to me. Now all 9 of you are waiting because of one person is slow, or I gave more work to that person or to that CPU. So these are 2 different kind of wait that was bundled together. Finally, Microsoft separated those. And So this is also exposed in Management Studio. So I just want to show you one example. And I'm not showing you everything in Management Studio. I just picked up a few things just to get you thinking that why you should be using this more and more. And probably, you'll find more features that are useful at your work. So I'm just going to change the max degree of parallelism from 1 to 0, means use all CPUs if you can. And when I showed you the word type before for a single query, Microsoft also has now this cool query that you can use. What this will do, if you take your session ID from here, my session ID is 85. If I plug this in here, anything come from session ID, it will just track the word types for that session ID, which is cool. So now, if I run this query, again, I'm going to turn on my actual execution plan. I'll run this. And once this finish, if we look at this plan, if we come here, again, if we look at the query time stats, I see that there's a difference of about 2 seconds, right? So where did that time go? If I come here, you see that I have these 10 different word types just from running that single query. And you see the CX packet and CX consumer. So CX consumer is because of what I was telling you, that the control node has to distribute the work and take it back, right? So you really cannot do much about this, but you should still worry about your CX packet word type. So this has been separated. And now if you see that there's 10 different word type, but if we come here, and if you go to properties, if we go to the word type, we see only 8. So Microsoft is smart enough, or whoever, Microsoft definitely smart, as a company, but whoever coded this product, they actually filtered those 2 word types that you really cannot do anything. And I bet I'm not going to click all this. If you click all this, you will not see the CX consumer. You'll only see the CX packet. Because I said CX consumer is not harmful, and you shouldn't be worried about it, or you shouldn't pay attention. But of course, there's always edge cases. So Eric Darling, who lives in New York, I have immense respect. I read his blog post all the time. He has a blog post when he used to work for Brent in the brentoza.com that CX consumer is not always harmless, right? So I just want to mention that. So if you're interested enough, there's the edge case he explained, go and read that. So I'm going to revert this back to maxed up to 2 for further demos. User-defined function is always a kind of a mystery for when you look at execution plan. It really doesn't reflect properly if you're using a user-defined function. So if there is a query that's running slow and it has user-defined functions because the function has to run for each row, it's kind of hard to prove, right? If someone come to you and developers say this is running slow, and you see their code, you see a user-defined function, you know that most probably it is due to that. But if you just look at a execution plan, it's kind of hard. So they made some improvement, which really made, if you're an operational DBA, it kind of make your life a lot easier to prove that why things are slow if someone reach out to you for help. So I'm creating this function just for a demo purpose, and there has been some improvement in 2019 with the user-defined function. There's a new feature about inlining user-defined functions. I'm not going to get there if you search it, but I'll show you that. So as I'm using SQL 2019, I'll change my compatibility level to behave like 2017 just for demo purpose. Now I created this function here with this name, and I'm going to use this function in this select query, right? And if I run this, and if you look at this execution plan, you really do not see any issue with this, right? It's a cluster index scan, and it's 98%. It's a compute scalar, and the select is, there's nothing there, 0. Looks pretty straightforward. And the scan is there because I really selected everything from here, right? If I had a white clause, probably I'll get a sick here, but that's not the point. Now, if someone say, this is running a little bit longer or complaining, we did not have a way to prove that it's because of the function. But now, look at this. I love this. This is my CPU time. And 2/3 of my CPU time was spent on the function. You see this UDF CPU time, UDF elapsed time, right? So this is really a good thing for us to troubleshoot this kind of queries. It was not easy before, so it's exposed here. Now, as I said, in 2019, there is improvement, and there's a lot of restrictions, not for all user-defined functions. So, be careful. It's documented enough. There's a lot of restrictions, but there are user-defined functions that can get in line. So now, if we run the same query, I haven't made any change to this query, and this query just changing the compatibility level now at like 2019, and you will see the execution plan will be. Look at this. So this was going behind the scene, but we could not see it, right? And now it's got inlined. So if we go here now, look at that. We do not see any UDF runtime, right? And there's another way to know that if your user-defined function got inlined or no, is this property. This is a pretty new one. So with these two things, you know that your user-defined function got inline. And what I showed you before, if you have a issue with a query, you can prove it that way, that how much time the function is taking. There's another improvement in 2019 called batch mode on row store. So batch mode on column store index was released first. There's a lot of requests from the community to have the same feature on the row store, because not it's not practical to use column store for everything. There are places that you really cannot, there are restrictions and all that. I'm not going to get into this, but I put enough comment here that you want to read about it. Nico, who recently joined Microsoft from Portugal, he has a nice video about this. And this is another, tips or tricks that you can, show your, folks if, people are resisting to upgrade to newer version, right? So again, I'm going to, go back to 140 compatibility level and look at it from a 2017 perspective. And if we turn on the execution plan, we're just doing a select count big, nothing fancy here, just from one of those big tables. And if we come here, you see this is a new thing, execution mode. Because of this, now you know whether you're getting a batch mode or row mode. And you can also see this from here. No, it will not show here, but I'll, in the next one, I'll show you this. So now we did not change anything, right? We're using the same database, but just now act like 2019. And if we run the same query, and you'll see, notice that it will run a lot faster. You see this is almost in a second. And now if you come here, you're getting a batch mode just because you are running in 2019. And I think we also have a new property on this. No, I should have shown you this here, sorry. Yep. actual execution mode is a batch mode. And maybe we should look at the runtime. So the CPU was 2278. If we go back here and run this, look at that. 7 seconds versus 2, right? Just using the newer version of SQL Server. So some of this you can even show it to those who are making decisions or people are resisting for upgrade. I know it's not always that simple, right? You have many other variables for upgrading a SQL Server version, but these are some of the things that you can definitely take screenshots when you go to present and make a case, why they should be upgrading. Of course, there are other reasons of support and all that. Other dilemma I see that the data professionals always has is statistics, right? And a lot of time you ask people, in an interview or in general, they'll say, oh, the stats are not good, maybe old, did you upgrade the stats and whatnot, right? How do you know, so yes, there are other queries that you can run, and I'll show you some of this, but without going anywhere. Now, staying in the execution plan, I can see what stats was used and what's the state of that statistics. That's kind of the purpose of this demo. So there's some setup code. I'm not going to read this. They're pretty self-explanatory. And creating a store procedure here, set up some stuff. So I'm just going to run this as is. Now the demo starts here. This is a store procedure I just created here. As you can see, it's pretty simple, just a select. This looks pretty simple, right? It's the index seek and a select here. So this one gives you details about your statistics. Your statistics name, table, schema, what sample percent you use to update the statistics. When was the last update? But the most interesting part is this, 19,873. What is this telling us? Since I updated my stats, this many rows are modified. And again, I said there are other objects that monitor all this info. And you have to write some queries to get into those. And my point again, I'm saying over and over, I do not want to go there. I don't want to write anything else. I just want to get it from here. Now, I wish there was a percentage of the total number of rows, right? That would probably help us, because now I have no idea how many records in this table and how many percent this 19,873 refers to. So this table actually, do not have many rows, is less than 20,000. So, and I also put some queries here, as I've been saying, I can get this exact info by writing all this T-SQL and do all these joins and all that, right? So I have total 19,972 rows. Out of that, this many was modified, right? So, which is very high percent. And then I have DBCC show stats. I have this another DMDB stats histogram I can use. They all give me the same info. Again, I don't do this because it's all, I can already get it from my plan. Now, if I update my stats with a full scan just for demo purpose, now if I run this again, now you can see this. I am actually 1 hour ahead of you. And because I just updated, I have 0 modification rows, right? So just by staying here, you have some idea about your stats and what are the stats being considered for this plan, right? Because you might have, many statistics on a table or, columns and auto created and all that, but which ones is impacting your query, you can just see it from right here. Again, you can see the info with running this T-SQLs. So someone asked me this question one time: if the query optimizer is considering more than one stats or multiple, can I get info about all of those? Yes, you can. And just to prove that point, if I come here, this query, when it was, the plan was generated, it actually considered 8 different statistics, as you can see here. I'm not going to, go and look at all that. And then, one time I was giving this presentation to some, to an audience in South America. Someone asked me, I put his name here with his email address. Rafael asked me a question. If it consider a auto-created stats, will this show up there, right? And I really didn't know because I didn't test with it. So by the time I could come up with some test query, he actually sent me all this to his, they said, go ahead and add this to your demo for future ones. I'm like, I said, thank you very much. So, and so these are, two stats. As you see, there is no auto-created stats. And I'm not going to go, how auto stats get created. So now if we run this, and if you go to execution plan, we'll see that, there is auto created stats, it did, and it is considering that. And the way we'll know this, if we run this query again, you'll see that there's auto stats got created. So it does work for all of those. So if it's multiple stats, single one, or the statistics was auto created, it will work for all of those. Residual predicate is another problem that we often deal with, right? What does that mean, right? What does that mean by residual predicate? So to give you an example, I live about 30 miles of Boston. If you say, give me all people who lives in Boston who also has last name equals, this, or start with this, whatever. Now you are asking for two different filters, right? Number one is filter by the city. And once that is done, now you have to know their last name start with something, right? So if you really do not have the correct index on that table or on that set of data, you have to do the swipe twice, right? Once you come and look at everybody in Boston, create a list, and then you have to again go through their last name, right? So you have to do two kind of iterations. So that's kind of the gist of this. Now, how do you know that you are having this issue? Just by looking at execution plan, and what you can do about this. So, most of the time you'll probably solve it with indexing, but how do you even know about it, right? If someone say this is running longer, what do you be looking at? Right? You look at this query, you can go and look at all the indexes, or you can simply just come to the query plan and find that. So let's look at this demo. Again, I drop an index, I'm creating one, and then I turn on this. So this is, I have, first I'm saying, give me the product ID, but then again, I also have a quantity filter, right? And if you just look at this, right? Index SIC and a select, perfect, right? No issues. But this is something new, also in the newer version of Management Studio, which you did not have before, is this number of rows red. If you ever see this is a huge discrepancy here, that you returned only, or your query returned 32 rows, but to serve these 32 records, it actually had to read 920. That should ring a bell. This is a small number, but if you magnify this in terms of millions or thousand, that's a problem, right? Because the more you have to read means the more pages you have to bring to the memory, and there are other issues, right? If those pages are not in the cache, you have to go and read from the disk and all that. Now you saw this, you have a problem. There's another thing you can see here. You have a SIC predicate, and there's another predicate, and I wish they would just say that this is a residual predicate, right? That's what you're talking about. In documentation, they talk about it, but they don't write that here. So as you can see, this tells you that it had to do a to swipe. Now, there is a trace flag. And again, I'm not recommending to run this in production. Please don't quote me. But this expose something that we did not see in there before. Now you see that we see a filter, right? And now you see that this one was 920. This is the first swipe. And if you look at this, same. If you look at this, you do not see the other predicate. What's happening is the first swipe, then this is the second one. Here it gets filtered again with the other predicate. So again, if we fix it with the index, now I run this. Good. Also, I do not have a residual predicate. I just have the SIG predicate. Again, my point is just staying in management studio, looking at the plan so you can solve some of the issues. I still see questions in Stack Exchange that people ask about profiler trace, right? Microsoft deprecated that. Extended event is a lot better, a lot lighter weight. There are many more events, many more hundreds of events in extended event compared to profiler trace. So, it's more narrow scope that you can filter your stuff, and it's lightweight on your server overall. But there was a hesitation of people adopting extended event trace. One of the reasons was a lot of people, I saw their comment, and in the community is very well known, is people talked about that we do not have a GUI for extended event like we had for profiler trace, right? So we have to, just write the code for extended event trace. So finally, Microsoft came up, and you need newer version of Management Studio to see this. That's why I'm talking about it. There is extended event profiler now. I don't know if you noticed this. And here you see two things. One is a standard, one is T-SQL. So T-SQL is a subset of standard. So in standard, there are more events, and all the events from T-SQL is already in standard. So you do not have to run both. You choose what you want to run. So if you just come here, if you just say launch session, it actually started an extended event trace. And the problem here is this only shows you on the screen. This doesn't, you do not have a way to save it in your, storage, and to load that before, later on, and to analyze and, see where the problem is, right? Because this just keeps scrolling through, and, not a, pleasant thing to, if you have, hundreds and thousands of queries running, to look at anything, right? Because this just, it's a circular, what do you call, like it's a fixed amount of memory, it's a circular memory. So once it's filled up, it will just overwrite, right? Just going there. But what you can do is, as soon as you turn this on, you get this quick session standard profile automatically get created here. So now what I can do, I can stop this. I can script this. And now this gives me a template of a extended event. And I can use this as my base and build on this, right? And add stuff or delete whatever I don't want. So what I did here, close this. So I wrote some script here. I'm saying, drop this. So I dropped it. Now I just took the exact query that I showed you. What I just added a destination path. So now I can save it. once I can save it, I can go and analyze it later on. And so if I recreate this, come here now, refresh. Now I have this definition, newer one. I start this. Now if I go to my C drive, I should see that. As you can see, I just started this, right? So if you are new to extended event, you've been putting it off, this can give you a quick start. I also have another one, which I'm not going to show you for the interest of time. I said, filter the duration, right? I do not want to know anything about less than 10,000 microseconds. So I kept my destination and I added a filter duration. And I also gave it a different name this time, right? So I can use that and I can start writing other definitions based on what I need. So just a thing for you if you are still holding off using extended event. And I'm sure if you search, there's a bunch of cool definitions you can find online. There are videos that people made. There are Pluralsight course on extended event trace. So this one, I ran this before you came online, and just to save some time, this one, what my goal is to show you that just by looking at execution plan, I can start improving the runtime of my query, right? If I think that it's running longer, I can start doing some tuning. So I have 3 different flavor of the same query I already ran, and I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to run this again just to save some time. So I wrote here how to reduce runtime by 90% just by using the information exposed in SSMS. So that's kind of the goal of this. So you see the first one, it ran for 28 seconds. The other cool thing you can do here, just by right clicking, you can always say, analyze my execution plan. And then you get this window. And the first one was set up. So I'm just going to go to my second one. And if I go to scenario, you see this, it actually tells you your problem, right? I was telling you before that, this is a problem. This is another problem. Because my estimated number of rows was 1, but my actual number of rows are a lot high. And because of that, it also actually gives you, a little bit more description here. And you can click this and, it gives you more information here that what the problem is. And if we close this now, so here, as you see, my estimated number of rows is 1, and my actual number is a lot higher, right? And because of that, if you look at this, I get a warning. Why did I get a warning? Because my estimated number of rows are so small, the memory grant that I got, because it thought it's just one record, it just gave me a small amount of memory. It doesn't mean that SQL Server didn't have memory, because I didn't ask for it, because I estimated only 1 record. It gave me a small amount of memory, and that memory was not enough for this sort. So the sort has to go to temp DB, means now I have to write this into the disk and then sort it and bring it back. And some of you might say, my temp DBs are on SSDs, but it still doesn't matter what latest and greatest storage you have. You're still talking about memory versus disk. So you're talking about microsecond versus millisecond. It's a big deal. And the reason, because of this. And one thing I wanted to show you is here, if someone come and tell you that, we need more memory, you do not want to agree to that, at least for this scenario. If you look at this, the desired memory was only 544 KB. It still gave you a little bit more. And it says that if you asked me, I could have given you this, but you didn't ask, so I didn't give you. So, sometimes if people see this sort warning and you say, spill to temp DB, people will come to you and say, hey, we need more memory. No, we do not need more memory. It's a different problem. And memory pressure itself is a different talk. I'm not going to get there. Now, I wrote the same query in a little bit different way. Now, as you can see, a little bit different plan from 28 seconds to 15 seconds here. And we still have a sort warning, but we got a little bit better. Now we have less pages got spilled, right? The reason, look at my estimated and my actual number from 1. Now we are, still we're not there. It's 9.3 million versus 31 million, but it's a lot better than one record, right? And my third version took 2 seconds, no spill, pretty close, 100%. Not really, a little bit off, but pretty close. So from 28 seconds to 2 seconds. Again, my point, like I've been mentioning, right? Staying here, you can do this. Compare show plan. So I'll be quick. I'm going to skip some of this. We're over an hour. I don't want to take all of your evening. So again, for demo purpose, creating a store procedure. I'm calling this with this parameter. Oh, sorry. And now what I can do is I can save this plan. I saved it before I was testing to make sure that it works. Now, if you make some changes, right? Either you make some changes, create an index, new index, whatever, or not, or someone come and say, I run this with this parameter value, it's pretty quick. When I run this, it run longer, whatever. I run this. And as you can see, it's running a little bit longer. I get this plan. So now it's running longer. Okay, so now I can bring up the old plan and compare with this. Now, close this. If you look at this 2 plans, right? And this is a simple one, not that complex. But if you look at this, just this, you see it's the same shape, same cost. You say, nothing wrong, right? It's the same thing, just, it's good, fine. And if you have a bigger query, what it does is, if you have a bigger plan, it actually finds the similar shapes and it blocks those with a different color. Now, just by coming here, if we go to properties, you can see right away, one of those qualified for 113,000 record, other one was qualified for 1173. So right there. Plus, it kind of highlights some of this stuff in yellow color. And I can go to the parameter list. And if you see here, I was compiled with this and I ran with the same. But here, because the plan was in the cache, I still compiled with the same number, but I ran it with a different value. So that gives you, again, some information. You can also come here and you can do comparison for each operator between the 2 plans, right? You can see, and again, you can download all these XMLs from TOO, or you can load it in a table somehow, parse XML and compare. I do not want to do this. It's already highlighted in yellow color for me, that where things differ between the 2 plans. So I just want to show you this. Searching show plan. So I'll probably go a little bit faster. If I'm going too fast, please stop me. I'm going to create a extended event trace, which I just talked about, just for the demo purpose. And why this has become important, right? Just look at this. For one operator, if you're running a SSMS version of 2014, you only get this information. For that same operator, if you're running in 2016, see how much more information is exposed to us, which was not there before. And if you go to a newer version of this SSMS, I think it's going to be more. I should probably update this from a newer one. So let me start this trace and then I'll tell you why I'm running this trace. So we'll be watching this live data. I'm just going to run this simple select statement. Look at this execution plan. Now, I've been telling you that, just by looking at the execution plan, we have some idea, where things went south, what is running longer and whatnot. But, if you have to find this from this plan, will be probably pretty ugly, right? Not so easy. So what I can do, stop this. I can come here. Now, this is per operator. I can see all this information, right? So pick anything. So like estimated number of rows, right? Let's sort this just for it. So the highest one is 19972. I can come to this plan. I can just say Control F. I can say, what did you look? Estimate rows, right? And the values we saw was 19972. I want to know which of these operators out of this, whatever number, 100 or whatever, has this. This will take you right there. Is there any other operator with that same? Yeah. So these two. You can search this plan for all of this quickly. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to go to the dashboard one. And I'm not going to go through all this, just two things I want to show you. Before that, I'm going to run some workload. And all these files are there, so you can do this. Oh no, I don't want to kill it. I haven't started even. Okay, so I'm running some stuff against AdventureWorks. Oh, come on, minimize this. Okay. Activity monitor was there all the time, right? It's a very old thing. One thing, be careful if you have DBAs in multiple locations, especially nowadays we are remote. If there is issue, make sure not everybody start activity monitor on their desktop because these are very, resource consuming, right? When I was first started this career, we had teams in Scotland, Malaysia, and one time, I was new, right? I didn't know all this. So everybody started this, and then we were told, this is one of the culprit that's causing more problems. So be careful. But one thing is pretty new is this active expensive queries. If someone come and tell you that, hey, my thing is running for longer and it's still running, you should be able to see it there. So we are running these 4 things you saw I started. These all show up in the expensive queries, right? And this can give you some idea, what it is doing, how much CPU, what database is running against, just without running anything. But again, make sure, not many people start running this thing. And if you just kill this now, if I kill all that, you will see that this 4 will disappear slowly. So this is a new one. I thought, some of you might not be aware of this. So I just wanted to see this is gone, right? So if someone, come and seek your help, just make sure, you should be able to see this here. The other one was, the performance dashboard. Again, I'm not going to talk about this, but oftentimes, there's a bunch of info and, they made it very rich nowadays. Some of this stuff was not there before, right? Your system CPU utilization, it gives you, what is the used by SQL Server and what's used by the other processes. And there are a bunch of queries, right? And all of these are actually saved in DMV, and you can write all this by yourself. And there are queries online you can find, like Glenberry has a bunch of queries. But if you do not have those ready, you just want to see right away, what's going on. Your where latches are stats and bunch of, expensive queries, and what else is happening, missing index, how many databases, and you can click and it takes you to other reports, right? So just wanted you to aware that, in Management Studio, you can get to all this. So that's pretty much, I'm done. That's all I had. So, I'm going to show you my contact again. And that's it. So thank you very much. I have all the time available. If any of you have any question, if you can take yourself off mute, if the organizers allow, do that. Otherwise, I'm looking at the chat window. let me know if I can answer anything, question, comments. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or use the chat if you don't want to talk out loud.
Seems that we are all shy tonight. Taya, I definitely appreciate this presentation. Lots of work goes into this. That part's pretty obvious. And you know, I learned a lot, and really appreciate learning some new things about what SSMS can do. So I appreciate your time for this evening, and thank you to everyone who joined. And again, we do this every first Wednesday at 7 p.m. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.